My name is Tom, and I never believed in curses or the supernatural. I was a city guy through and through, but that all changed when I inherited my uncle's farm. Uncle Frank had always been a bit of a mystery in our family. He lived alone, far from the city, on a farm in a small, isolated town. We rarely visited, and when we did, he was always cordial but distant. He passed away suddenly, and since he had no children, I was named his sole heir. When I arrived at the farm, it was just as I remembered it, picturesque but unsettlingly quiet. The farmhouse, with its creaky wooden floors and old-fashioned charm, seemed almost frozen in time. I felt a mix of sadness for my uncle's passing and a sense of obligation to honor his memory. I decided to spend a few months there to sort through his affairs and see if I could make a go of farming. One evening, while rummaging through Uncle Frank's old study, I found a dusty, leather-bound journal hidden at the back of a drawer. It was filled with cryptic entries about the watchers and strange occurrences that he had witnessed over the years. The entries detailed odd noises at night, tools being moved, and livestock behaving erratically. His last entry, dated a week before his death, simply read, "They're getting closer." I tried to dismiss the unsettling entries as the ramblings of an old man who had spent too much time alone, but soon I began to experience strange occurrences myself. Tools that I had left neatly in the barn would be scattered around the yard in the morning. Crops that were healthy the previous day were found wilted or uprooted. The livestock seemed jittery and would often stare intently at something unseen. The noises were the worst. Eerie whispers, rustling leaves, and occasional thuds echoed through the night. At first, I tried to rationalize them. Perhaps it was just the wind or wild animals. But as the occurrences became more frequent and more inexplicable, I started to feel genuinely afraid. Then, the livestock started disappearing. At first, it was just a chicken or two, but soon, entire herds of sheep were vanishing without a trace. There were no signs of struggle or evidence of predators. It was as if they had simply been plucked from existence. Determined to catch the culprit, I installed cameras around the farm and stayed up late to keep watch. But the footage revealed nothing. The times when the animals disappeared were marked by strange static and distorted images. The only sound captured was a low, indistinct hum. Feeling increasingly paranoid and sleep-deprived, I confided in Mr. Harris, an old neighbor who had known my uncle well. He was a kind man, but his eyes darkened when I mentioned the strange occurrences. He warned me about the curse of the farm and told me that previous owners had faced similar issues. They had either left in fear or disappeared themselves. I laughed it off as superstition, but the fear in his eyes was hard to dismiss. My friend Jake, who was curious about my stories and wanted to help, came to stay for a weekend. Jake was the type of person who loved a good mystery and didn't scare easily. I was grateful for the company and the extra pair of hands. One night, after we heard strange noises coming from the barn, Jake decided to investigate while I stayed behind, watching from the house. He grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the darkness. Minutes turned into hours, and Jake didn't return. My initial irritation turned to worry, and I decided to check on him. I grabbed my flashlight and headed towards the barn, calling out his name. The barn was empty, and there was no sign of Jake. The local sheriff helped me search the farm and the surrounding area, but we found nothing. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. Jake had simply vanished. The sheriff, a practical man, suggested that Jake had gotten lost or had left without telling me. Determined to find answers, I searched the barn thoroughly and discovered a hidden trapdoor under a pile of hay. The trapdoor led to a cellar that I had no idea existed. The air in the cellar was damp and musty, and the walls were lined with shelves filled with old, disturbing drawings and maps of the farm. There were annotations and symbols that I couldn't understand, but they all pointed to one thing. The farm sat atop a network of old, abandoned tunnels. Cross-referencing Uncle Frank's journal, I realized these tunnels were part of an old project from decades ago. The journal hinted at something terrible that had been sealed down there, something that should never be disturbed. The last few entries were increasingly frantic, describing a growing sense of dread and an unseen presence. With a mix of fear and resolve, I decided to explore the tunnels, hoping to find Jake and uncover the truth. I packed a bag with supplies and ventured down into the dark, labyrinthine passages. The air was thick with dampness and an overpowering sense of dread. As I moved deeper, the tunnel walls were covered with strange symbols and remnants of past explorations. Deep within the maze of tunnels, I found signs of a struggle. Scratches on the walls, a piece of Jake's torn shirt. My flashlight flickered and I felt an eerie presence behind me. A chilling whisper echoed in the narrow space, sending a shiver down my spine. Panicked, I turned and saw nothing but darkness. Suddenly I heard footsteps, quick shuffling steps approaching from all directions. I ran, my heart pounding, the unseen footsteps matching my pace. I barely made it out, something unseen chasing me until I burst back into the open air, gasping for breath. I knew I couldn't go back down there alone. Back in town, I visited the local library and researched the history of the farm and the tunnels. I found old newspaper articles and records detailing the construction of the tunnels as part of a mining operation in the late 1800s. The project was abandoned after a series of mysterious disappearances and deaths. Locals believed the tunnels were cursed and they sealed them off, hoping to bury whatever evil lurked within. I also found stories of previous farm owners who had faced similar issues, strange occurrences, missing people, and the cursed land that swallowed them whole. Each story echoed the same chilling pattern. I documented everything in my journal, detailing my decision to leave the farm. The experience had shaken me to my core, and I knew I couldn't stay any longer. Before I left, I locked the trapdoor and boarded up the barn, hoping to seal whatever was down there. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't over. As the days passed, my unease grew. I began to feel a presence watching me constantly. It was subtle at first, a prickling sensation at the back of my neck, a fleeting shadow in the corner of my eye, but soon it became more pronounced. Objects in the house would be moved, lights would flicker, and always there was the feeling of being watched. I tried to go about my daily tasks, but the farm felt different. It was as if the land itself had shifted, becoming darker and more sinister. The animals were restless, and I could feel eyes on me at all times. Determined to understand what I had awakened, I delved deeper into Uncle Frank's journal and the books in his study. I found references to ancient rituals and dark magic, hints that the land had been cursed long before the farm was established. The symbols I had seen in the tunnels were part of a protective seal, meant to keep something terrible at bay. Realizing I couldn't face this alone, I reached out to an old friend, Professor Langley, an expert in ancient cultures and the occult. Langley was skeptical at first, but the urgency in my voice convinced him to come. He arrived a few days later, armed with books, equipment, and a healthy dose of curiosity. Together, we began to piece together the history of the farm. Langley confirmed that the symbols in the tunnels were part of an ancient sealing ritual. The stone I had touched was a keystone anchoring the seal and containing whatever lay beneath. By disturbing it, I had weakened the seal, allowing the presence to grow stronger. Langley devised a plan to restore the seal and hopefully put an end to the disturbances. It required a ritual to be performed at the site of the keystone, using specific incantations and offerings. We spent days preparing, gathering the necessary items and translating the incantations. We descended into the tunnels, our flashlights flickering in the oppressive darkness. The air was thick with tension as we approached the altar. Langley began the incantations, his voice steady despite the growing sense of dread. I placed the offerings around the stone, my hand shaking. As the ritual progressed, the ground began to tremble, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter. Suddenly, a loud guttural roar echoed through the tunnels, and the temperature dropped sharply. The candles flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. The farm felt different. Still eerie, but no longer oppressive. The animals were calm, and the whispers had ceased. Langley and I spent the next few days recovering and documenting our experience. He left soon after, promising to continue researching the farm and its history. I was left with a sense of unease, knowing that we had only temporarily restored the seal.
We planted new crops and tended to the animals, bringing a sense of life back to the farm. The townspeople, once wary, began to warm up to me, and I found a sense of community I had never known in the city. One crisp autumn morning, a stranger arrived at the farm. She was a young woman dressed in simple clothes with an air of quiet determination. She introduced herself as Emily, claiming to be the granddaughter of the farm's original owners. She had heard stories of the farm's curse and had come to see it for herself. Emily was fascinated by the history of the farm and offered to help with the restoration.
One evening, as we were sorting through old documents in the study, Emily found a reference to a hidden chamber beneath the tunnels. According to the text, the chamber contained a powerful artifact that could either strengthen or destroy the seal. Intrigued, we decided to find the chamber and retrieve the artifact. We gathered our supplies and ventured into the tunnels once more. Emily's knowledge of the symbols and rituals proved invaluable, guiding us through the labyrinthine passages. After hours of searching, we found a concealed door, its surface covered in intricate carvings. With a sense of trepidation, we pushed the door open and entered the chamber. It was larger than we had expected, the walls lined with ancient texts and artifacts. In the center stood a pedestal, upon which lay a small, intricately carved box. As we approached the pedestal, the air grew cold, and a sense of foreboding washed over us. Emily reached out to open the box, but I stopped her, sensing that something was wrong. We examined the carvings on the pedestal, discovering a series of warnings about the artifact's power. It was a trap. The box was designed to unleash the very presence we had sought to contain. Realizing the danger, we carefully resealed the chamber and retreated to the surface. Emily and I continued our work on the farm, determined to protect it from the darkness below. We shared our findings with Professor Langley, who helped us devise new rituals to strengthen the seal. As the years passed, the farm flourished, becoming a symbol of resilience and hope. Emily and I grew closer, our shared experiences forging a deep bond. We married and started a family, instilling in our children a love for the land and a respect for its mysteries. The farm remains a place of wonder and caution, its secrets buried deep. But we know that as long as we remain vigilant, the Watchers will stay at bay. The Vanishing at Miller's Farm is a story of mystery, fear, and resilience. It's a reminder that some places hold secrets best left undisturbed. But it's also a testament to the power of courage and determination in the face of the unknown. The Watchers may always be there, but so will we, standing guard over the land we've come to love.